Ever wondered what the world would look like if you had never existed? On Christmas Eve, 1945, George Bailey is at his wit's end. His business, Bailey Building and Loan, is on the verge of collapse. His wife and kids tug at his coattails, and deep down, he knows he never pursued his lifelong dream of travelling the world and building things. Lots of things. Clarence, a trainee angel hovering in the stars, watches George's life so far. At 12, he saves his brother from drowning. At 21, his father dies, and with reluctance, he takes over the family business. Determined not to let it fall to the hands of Henry F. Potter, a ruthless and miserly businessman who controls almost everything else in Bedford Falls, New York. George marries Mary, although their moments of intimacy are forever interrupted by the twists and turns of Bailey Building and Loan. As he stands on the ledge of a bridge, contemplating a deadly dip, his angel Clarence beats him to it, triggering George's yearning to help others, and launching a hypothetical adventure where George wanders through a world where he'd never been born. Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life is a Christmas classic with a Dickensian crescendo, but is this tale of greed and gratitude a fable against financialization, or a corny keep calm and carry on decal? You're listening to Move to You, the podcast that knows exactly what the world would look like if it had never existed. I'm joined by Owen, as ever, and for the third time, very good friend of the pod, Daniel Neofetou. Daniel, did this bring a tear to your eye on repeated viewing?
Every time. Every time.
I'm crying now.
Shall I begin?
Yeah.
Where do you begin?
There's no getting anything out of you.
Let's take it back because I think so
let's go to different angles. So do you feel that there's a political agenda behind
that's the question? And
the FBI did, didn't they?
Explain.
There's a memo, an FBI memo. I'll get it up. It's on the Wikipedia. On May 26th, 1947, the Federal Bureau of Investigation issued a memo stating, with regard to the picture It's a Wonderful Life, redacted, stated in substance that the film represented rather obvious attempts to discredit bankers by casting Lionel Barrymore as a Scrooge type so that he would be the most hated man in the picture. This, according to these sources, is a common trick used by communists. In addition, redacted, stated that, in his opinion, the picture deliberately maligned the upper class, attempting to show the people who had money were mean and despicable characters.
It is a condemnation of robber baron greed, right?
I mean, because he literally robs. He literally robs.
Yeah, the £8,000 that's from Uncle Harry.
Like, it's not enough that he's like an asset stripper, and he has to literally do something which is not allowed within the bounds of capitalism.
Yeah,
to be the villain of the piece. Yeah.
The thing with Potter is Potter kind of represents kind of the antithesis of the American dream, because he is an interruption to people's ability to self-improve and to capitalize and to live a kind of moral, upstanding homeowner's life in America. And that's a very kind of asinine way to say it, but Potter is a spider at the center of a web, in a way, because he interrupts that because he's greedy. And I think Capra's film is not like it's not the film Bernie Sanders would have made, right? It's kind of a paean to kind, respectful financial institutions, which is the buildings and loans. It's like there is a kind.
Would Bernie Sanders not have made that film?
No, he would have made a film for the 99%.
I don't think Sanders is against small businesses.
No, well, he might be, but you can say that.
I think fundamentally it's communitarian, isn't it?
It's about this small town America with kind institutions, looking out for the local community. It's about responsible institutions which are not greedy, which are there to help people. So it has an intense faith in, I guess, the American Constitution, which is
Mr. Smith Goes to Washington all over, right? Because
absolutely.
Because that is a film about a plucky senator who uncovers a plot to build a dam or whatever. I haven't seen it for a long time. I started watching it today, but I haven't seen it for a long time.
It's been a long time since I've seen it. James Stewart.
It's about Jimmy Stewart being the naive but but yet honest, and yeah, the guy who's the model of the American citizen who fights against the degeneration of the system, which should be good.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel like that main character of Jimmy Stewart is like is surely the ultimate like liberal idea of like someone who, like, if only the system was run by the good guys, then everything would be fine.
Yeah, because the town is full of Bedford Falls is full of good guys. It has a degree of class solidarity. People look out for each other. It's a healthy, bustling community. The issue comes that, you know, it's alluded to, Potter's slums. You know, he runs slums. He's the only, people say people have to crawl to Potter. If it wasn't for the buildings and loan, people would have to crawl to Potter, and he has like these exploitative mortgage payments. He's opposed to the idea of like the common working man, like Ernie the cab driver, being able to own a home even though he can't afford one. I was reading an article earlier which was talking about the kind of anxiety at the heart of It's a Wonderful Life. It was released in 1946. America just finished war. At its core, rather than like a sort of, it's really a kind of like a kind of quite anxious film, I think. Maybe you guys will disagree about this, but like, because this is America before the war, the only reason that America kind of pulled itself out of the depression and the slump was mobilizing for war. Now we've gone back out of war, what will happen? There's a kind of anxiety about the American future. And so as people return from like Japan and Germany back to their small towns, and remember, you know, George Bailey's an interesting protagonist because he stays at home during the war, whereas both Capra and like James Stewart were like both fought in the war, were kind of decorated veterans. You know, it's an interesting kind of.
Didn't Capra make films through the war?
Yeah, but he also, no, you're right. Actually, I'm thinking about James Stewart. So, but they both served. They both served in a kind of overt militarized way. And they've got the guy who was 4F on his draft card, couldn't serve, and they go back to that anxiety about how are people gonna, what's the future of America going to be? So I think there's a kind of like weird anxiety because it feels like the film, the fact that Bedford Falls doesn't become Pottersville rests on the good work of one citizen, and that's the kind of anxiety it is. But for this one guy, this healthy, booming town becomes a fucking awful necropolis of evil because it is a shithole. But Daniel, like, I think, what do you think? What do you think Capra's politics are? Knowing, you know, you said what the FBI said about him. What do you think he's trying to like communicate in this like crucial juncture in 1946? War's over. What's he doing?
I think we can take him at face value, can't we? I don't think he has an articulated politics aside from like having faith in the individual. Like, he's basically communitarian, right? He's against the. To put it in Marxist terms, he would be against the subsumption of use value by exchange value in terms of like in the way that exchange value leads to a kind of deracination where everything becomes homogenized and people are alienated from their communities, and like this is and then you know that can go two ways. That can go to a kind of communitarian prelapsarian yearning, which is what he has, where you have faith in the idea of the American Constitution, all this kind of bollocks, or you can
the American dream, which
the American dream,
What does prelapsarian mean?
Before the fall,
right. Before sin, before original sin. But yeah, but this is kind of, you're right, because the town as it's shown to us through the kind of unintentional stewarding of George Bailey, who kind of sacrifices himself. Sacrifices his dreams and his bodies and his individualist kind of desires. As absurd as see the world, travel the world, go to college and build big cities. It's like, you can do good here. Yeah, so you're right, there is a communitarian element to it.
And like Frank Capra says that, because I watched that interview he did with Letterman in 1983, I think.
We were watching it earlier,
yeah. Ralph said. In that he says... You can tell he doesn't really have a politics because he just says that his films are always about the individual. But what he means by that is not like the kind of frontiersman. frontiersman individual of the American dream, in the sense of the American dream in terms of manifest destiny. The rugged individualist American dream. He names the individual in the dialectical reciprocity with his community, right? With his or her or their community, right? He's talking about the individual, the rooted individual. So, in that sense, it's kind of. So in that sense, I wouldn't say he has, because how do I say it? How do I put this? In terms of saying he has faith in the American dream, he has faith in the American dream insofar as like the idea of anyone in America can make something of themselves.
Yeah.
But he sometimes he also thinks that can happen without other people being fucked over, right?
Yeah.
So it's
there's a third way for kind of capital. There's a third way for capital and the community, the kind of organic communism of a community to kind of hold together, which is actually consistent with the ideas of the American dream, because it's like you could come from rags or you could come from the gutter, but you can become the kind of captains of industry in this new world. And it's it's not bootstrapping though, right? It's not bootstrapping. No, it's not. It's all about, because there's actually a reciprocal. There's a reciprocal relationship between the individual institutions in America. It's saying when those things are in balance and when people aren't being greedy and kind of taking more than their fair share and not giving back, which is Potter is. Potter doesn't give back. He takes. He only takes. And there's the scene where there's the run on the bank, right? And, every element of that is kind of proof of that communitarian aspect, because there's the fear that people are going to lose out. The cab driver. It's a really weird line where he's like, well, I've never seen a run on a bank before, but that has all the signs of a run on the bank. Maybe you should check that out. It's like a quest from an NPC. And he's like, gets out of the car and goes in. But there's like, he makes that impassioned speech. It's like, well, your money isn't here. Your money's in so-and-so's house. And your money's in so-and-so's house. There's a
great Simpsons scene.
Which episode is that?
It's on the PTA disbands, where Bart's in the bank and he's like, what do you mean there's no money? And then Jimmy Stewart comes out and is like, your money's in Bill's house. And then Moe's like, why don't you my money in your house, Bill? And there's a big riot. And
the two perfect holes of but it's true, because there's like, and then characters begin to come forward, and he's like, well, he gives up his wedding dowry, his money. He's got £2,000. And the characters come in and they're like, well, how much do you need to get through? And it's like, well, $20. I need $20. I need $17.50. And that scene is reciprocated at the end of the film, where he gets
that first dickhead. He wants £250.
Yeah,
what do you need?
And he's like, come on, you can't beat me,
mate.
But then when he does GoFundMe at the end,
does that dude come back then? Give him money? Did they?
I can't recall.
That's a good point, actually.
But that would be smart thing narratively to do.
It's relatively.
But another, if we're going to talk about the last scene, so one thing here that does kind of expose the contradictions of talking about bad capitalists and good capitalists, because Sam Wainwright calls and just offers to
the 25,000 that he
and he only needs 8,000. So all this like sentimentality of everyone coming together to give just doesn't matter, because you've got good capitalists who can just bail you out. So
Sam Wainwright, who's kind of he makes a killing in plastics. He offers George Bailey a job earlier, if you remember, and he's like, I'm going to create.
Well, shares, isn't it? It's like he's asking him to give him money.
He offers him he asks for seed investment. Like, he wants George Bailey to be like an angel investor or whatever the fuck in his startup. But it's full of the relationship. I think that Frank Capra was politically quite conflicted in a way, because he believed in standing up for the individual, communitarianism. And this was an era, I guess, when the big post-war American conglomerations hadn't really properly emerged yet. And there was this kind of crisis of identity in American life after the Second World War. It's almost like which way man, like moment. And he was a Republican. He was a Catholic Republican, quite reactionary in his private life.
Realize.
He was a Republican Party member, quite reactionary.
But the GOP back then weren't necessarily.
No.
When did the GOP become right wing?
Well, it depends who you. There's a whole film about the Democrats flipping.
I don't really know much about this.
I don't know. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to be proven
Obviously, the FDR was. I like plead ignorance. Like, I don't know anything, but I know that FDR was a Democrat. So, like,
yeah, he hated FDR.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he really hated FDR. He hated everything to do with the New Deal. He hated. So he had I think there's a weird contradiction at the heart of Frank Capra, where because his parents had emigrated from Italy, he had that kind of American dream thing. He was obviously president of the Academy, a film academy. So he was kind of treading this tightrope between institutional success, wealth, fame, kind of the emerging elite of post-war America, and also the kind of plucky communitarian aspect. And I think a film like It's a Wonderful Life puts those anxieties on a plate, because they're all there. Because, like we're saying, it has this really wonderful like scene at the end where everyone kind of puts their money in a basket and saves George Bailey. But like you said, it's the Sam Wainwright in New York with his plastics company who steps in with the 25 grand that really kind of saves his bacon in a day.
But it doesn't matter to anyone else, does it? Because he only needs $8,000, so he doesn't need.
Yeah, the additional.
Yeah.
What about you, Ralph? Did you? Because this is your first viewing, I believe. Right?
Yes.
How did you find it? Because you got the Blu-ray, you did everything. You went clear on this, didn't you?
Yeah. So I was. I think narratively it's a bit like a Simpsons episode, actually. It was interesting that you mentioned that. Like, it has a wonderful predictability to it, the kind of arc of everything. And there's quite a frustrating bit when Jimmy Stewart doesn't realise. He's like, we're quite a fair bit into him being shown the world where he didn't exist and things being like quite unpleasant. Yeah, and he still doesn't realise, and when he goes after his wife, who's I think
you wouldn't. Yeah, in terms of believability, you wouldn't realise you wouldn't believe it, so you'd be freaking the fuck out, and you think
yeah. It's just kind of excruciating to watch, but but it has to happen to show all the dimensions of it. But yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I didn't like. I was quite emotional at the end. It's a great, beautiful ending. But yeah, I guess it's always interesting in popular culture where there's like such a clear identification of capitalist greed, and there's some suggestion, I think, that capitalism requires greed. I feel like the way that you could interpret the way that Potter steals the £8,000 as being like, this is inherently how people who are successful in that system operate. Like they are successful because they're nasty, and therefore it's a system that rewards nastiness. But yeah, I'm not usually one for like sort of sentimental Hollywood films like this. They don't kind of like really fire me up. But yeah, it was heartwarming and pleasant.
Compelling. It's a compelling story.
Jimmy Stewart's a very good actor in his own great. Like weird Joe Biden-y way.
He is Joe Biden, isn't he?
Joe Biden is a poor man's Jimmy Stewart. Is not.
Yeah. Mr. Deeds is indeed going to Washington because he's about to become the new president.
Mr. Smith. Mr. Deeds was Gary Cooper.
Oh, that's it. Okay, Mr. Smith is indeed going to Washington. Scrub my joke. There we go. But there's an element. Yeah, at the end when he shows the dystopia, and like I said earlier, like the thin line between Pottersville and therefore America and Baileyville or whatever the fuck it is, Bailey Falls, whatever the fuck it's called.
Whoa!
Bedford Falls is so thin, right? It's like a few good men. That's what kind of Capra is saying. A few good men can save this world. It needs upstanding institutions and local leaders to kind of usher America into this great.
That's where he becomes like a filmmaker of the individual.
Scratch that. I just saw. Wait a second. I just saw this. Okay, so I just found an article on Quartz about the FBI's opinion of. And not only did Frank Capra hate FDR, he sympathised with Franco and Mussolini.
I mean, who doesn't, right?
This is wild.
When you say sympathise, what was in what way?
Okay, so it's an article by Quartz, and the headline is: "The FBI considered It's a Wonderful Life to be communist propaganda." And blah 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 blah. It just covers what the FBI said in that memo. But then it says, many writers of It's a Wonderful Life were, indeed, likely communists. but the film's director, Frank Capra, was a lifelong conservative who hated FDR and sympathised with Franco and Mussolini. And the latter line is a link, so I'll click that link right now. Let's see what they have to say here.
I mean, I've got to say up front that this podcast is in favour of Il Duce, the only legitimate ruler of Italy in the 20th century. So let's just get that now. But
this whole conversation was triggered by...
It's a New York Times article behind a fucking paywall, so I don't know. But the headline is, "It wasn't such a wonderful life." So
this whole discussion was triggered by an indirect communication between the two of you via me about It's a Wonderful Life. Did you just some passing comment Owen made on a podcast that you listened to, Daniel, where you said your mate's completely wrong about Capra. He was a comrade.
Oh yeah, well apparently not. I thought he was because I just seem to recall that, like, when I was at uni doing film all those years ago, back in 2008, when we did a Hollywood module, we did It's a Wonderful Life, and also Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and I remember the lecturer making out that Frank Capra was a fellow traveller, and really? So this lecture must have been full of shit. Yeah.
Don't believe everything that you
hear at uni. The British there's an element where you can make the claim, and it's easy to confuse it if you're looking at it from a UK Anglo perspective, right? And you're looking at American going, well, actually, yeah, like in a really basic reading, Mr. Potter is the capitalist robber baron. He is Ford, whatever. He is, he's sort of leading the town dry.
This guy had seen all his films, and he was talking. It was a lecture about Frank Capra.
Is this like One Nation conservatism? Was Capra's conservatism like one of those kind of really outdated forms of conservatism that just wouldn't work post?
I mean, I would assume so. Yeah, I would assume he's probably like, we don't want feckless people getting handouts. We don't want people getting handouts. We want people to invest in a building society.
So he might be more like Peter Oborne now.
No, because Peter Oborne's not a conservative, is he? Peter Oborne's like a. As I said to you before, he's like a posh guy who wears tweed and is essentially left wing.
There's definitely an element with It's a Wonderful Life where it has the dressings of a film which is opposed to greed and capitalism. You can read it. You can certainly read it that way. In this one, pre-neoliberal, pre-Pinochet, pre-Thatcher, pre-Reaganite political cast, you can see it as this kind of. I guess social conservatism, right? That's kind of what the film is proposing. A good local institution. It's still the bank that saves the day in the film. It's just the good bank that saves the day. It's buildings and loan. It's not Potter's evil emporium.
It's a building society, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's like radical, in a way, almost quasi-radical roots to the film. But yeah, that's why I always felt really conflicted about this film, where I've been interested in it for a long time, because it does have these kind of morally ambiguous roots, like kind of messages about the American consensus after the Second World War. And I think this film is explicitly addressed at people who were returning from the war to America, to their small towns. They've seen the world probably for the first fucking time. It's like, they haven't left Bedford Falls, but they went to Iwo Jima and sort of like flamethrowed a trench, and now they've come home, and this is a new settlement. Which way are we going to go? Are we going to go evil corporation, or are we going to go local communitarian? Fundamentally, like, the root is home ownership, is what they're really saying. And kind of George Bailey says, it's not
a building society, is it? No, it's just a small book.
I think it's the equivalent of. Because they're loaning people money at, like, it seems like at 0% or something. Like they
have shareholders though, don't they?
They have shareholders. People invest in the community, the company community. But it's like,
before we get caught up in the fiscal minutiae of building societies, I've got a great quote from John Cassavetes, one of my favourite directors, who at the moment of Capra's death said, "Maybe there really wasn't an America, it was only Frank Capra."
That's interesting. What, the imaginary of Frank Capra's America?
Yeah, it told people, like you said, at that moment after the war that there was this, that this is what America was.
Maybe there was never America. Maybe there's just John Cassavetes.
Cassavetes.
Well, I feel like John Cassavetes is a better
um,
reflection of America than. Not that I really know much about America, but you know, Cassavetes' films are like thoroughly lacking in like idealization.
What about Nick Cassavetes? His films.
Never seen him.
The
I've not
Notebook.
seen those.
The Notebook is
No, I
by
haven't
him.
seen
The Notebook. That
The
film.
Notebook.
Really?
Can't be as good as Opening Night.
Opening Night's a great film. Faces is better.
I'm a love
You
streams
think?
proponent here.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm pro love streams, mate.
The Notebook. That's why I think he's in The Notebook. That's why Gina Rowland's in The Notebook, because
okay.
her son directed it. What else has he done?
All right,
He's done. He also did. He
in
also
the film.
Well, Nick Cassavetes.
Nick Cassavetes. Yeah,
I don't know his oeuvre, to be honest.
I think he did The Hangover Part 2.
No, he didn't. You sure?
No,
Seriously?
Todd Phillips did, but he did something in it.
Is that a screenwriter or an exec producer or something?
He was in
That's
Face Off.
incredible. He was in Face Off.
Yeah.
A great film, by the way. It's just, I don't
Fantastic.
Oh, he has a
great film.
cameo as Tattoo Joe.
Oh,
That's
oh.
true.
He's an actor as well as everything else.
Yeah, just like his dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, less searing than his dad, maybe. God, Jesus Christ.
That's such a horrible leg. I always feel sorry for the children of very successful, famous people.
There's a.
Like-
do you know there's a ice hockey player called Andrei Tarkovsky? I don't know if he's any relation. But yeah, it's a weird film because there is a nostalgic, romanticized vision of America, which is George Bailey's America, where he is kind of he's sacrificing himself for the good of the community, and the world, the milieu he kind of moves in is like, it's great, it looks lovely, fucking hell, like, you know, he goes to the school dance and they'll do a wet t-shirt competition in the pool. It's amazing. It's like, it's really nice kind of halcyon prelapsarian beauty. The world after, you know, sort of if George Bailey had never existed is this resentful, angry, bitter. It's the America almost of like Amazon warehouses.
It looks
right?
pretty cool,
It's like,
doesn't it? It looks pretty good. It looks like Vegas.
Well, I was messaging like Ralph last night. I was watching it, and when he goes into Martini's bar, which is like the American a Dreamer place, he goes into this like Italian restaurant, and it's like there's like a black guy playing jazz on a piano. Go, well, clearly this is a decadent fallen society.
and then also, of course, the maid as well. Let's talk about the maid.
The maid, yes,
about how his brother slaps her ass.
Yeah, I saw that. Like, there's a quick thing where,
and then
like,
also how she's like listening to them, and they're like, well, you know, like really patronisingly, like,
she's a live-in maid, clearly brought these kids up, and she happens to be overhearing like a vital family conversation about George's future, and he's like, well, do you want to pull up a chair and listen? It's like, gee, fuck off, mate. Like, I don't think.
Also, was she the same woman who at the end comes up and's like,
gives her money for her wedding that she never had?
No, for the divorce she never had.
Divorce she never had.
She was like,
yeah, she does. Yeah.
But is that the maid?
Yeah, it is.
Okay,
Yeah. There's a funny thing with the maid where like the impression is given that I think it's all justified by the idea that she sort of gives as good as she gets.
But I think that's like because I think that's a trope of Frank Capra's films as well, because in Mr. Cisco's to Washington, in the half I watched earlier, there's a bit where there's loads of black baggage carriers at the train station, and there's one point where one of them's carrying a really heavy suitcase, and he's like, "Sir, can you hold this suitcase for a second?" and gives it to the guy whose suitcase it is, and then runs off. So it's kind of like, they're downtrodden, but they know who's really the boss. And that makes it okay.
You might be the oppressed, but you know you have there's the weapons of the weak. It's basically got Gruelish politics. It's like the politics are really confused with it of any nostalgic. It's like hauntology, but without the haunting.
Of course, if we look at it objectively, like as not what Frank Capra's politics were, but what it says, is actually quite depressing, isn't it? Because it's like this dude, he wanted to see the world. He had big ambitions, and everything was crushed. I mean, basically, he's had a shit life because of his shit life. Because he's been so committed to his like dad's like crappy little community bank, and his brother doesn't give a fuck. and just like that's where the fuck he wants. Every
his brother's
opportunity
an absolute fucking pimp. He's like all-star American footballer, wins the Medal of Honor, goes to college, marries this absolute fucking 10 out of 10. Hey George, I got you some points.
It's funny that it's presented as having this moral message when like there is also like underneath it a deep sense of like not having really lived one's truth at all.
And then if we think about what would happen afterwards, like, they've all bailed him out now, but how long is he going to stay afloat for? Probably not long. Definitely not till 70s. So, I mean, as an objective reflection of reality, then it probably is a better testament to, like, it's as a document of the possibilities of America, irrespective of what Frank Capra's own politics were, what it actually is quite an accurate reflection in terms of the individual attempting to maintain integrity.
But the moral is like keep going, even if you've lived a life that's been totally in the service
is that the
of other people. Because he's so happy at the end that he's seen what the world would have been like without him, so he decides to keep going.
It is because he's crushed his ambitions throughout his life. He has sacrificed himself, but individualism and individual exceptionalism is still really celebrated. Like his brother returns from the war an absolute golden boy, this hero, right? And they do say, well, here's Sir George Bailey, the richest man in town. He's like, he's demonstrably not the richest guy in town. Like he's got like, he's like
not
IRS.
Rich in any way. He's not rich in like money. He's not rich in like fulfillment. He's not rich in like,
he lives in his drafty old house. It's weird. It's got this kind of garbled
nice wife, but
he's got a nice wife. I think he should have gone with Violet personally, but
Violet was paying
the town bicycle. Is what it implies, but it's what it implies.
Well, she's paying in the sense that like women in the 40s who all look they all look the same. Why does everyone look the same? Is it because there was no there wasn't much like genetic
women in the 20s really look the same.
Not much genetic influence from elsewhere. Like is that why? Like they.
Well, it was even if you're young, you still dress relatively conservative. Like the bit with Violet where she wears the kind of figure-hugging dress, and everyone's like, bow tie starts spinning when she walks past. It's like the most exotic. The tongue rolls out on the floor, and it's just like ooga. That's like the only kind of like no one could really individuate themselves in this town. Like it's kind of you live a good moral life, and you have 4 walls and a roof and a fireplace and he says 2 rooms. Ernie wants a house. He's like, doesn't Ernie not have the right to have two bedrooms and a bath? And like that's the kind of goal, right? It's the basic dignity.
Speaking of the good moral life, like I was watching this with a couple of my neighbors, and during the sequence where we see how terrible everything turned out without him, there are speaking as you did about the jazz players in the bar, when they go down the central avenue of Bedford Falls, like there's loads of clubs. Nightclubs. They just seem sick, especially after 10 months of no clubs. I was like, this Pottersville. This seems like quite a good place.
It seemed lit, didn't it? I'd far rather be in Pottersville than Bedford Falls.
Yeah, and it's a way he would have an easier life, like just doing like some shitty job that he didn't give a fuck about. And then having his time on his holidays, he could go around the world and do what he cares about, than slaving away at this job that he like isn't his passion and is like immensely demanding. It stops him from like having sex with his wife ever. He
dies a virgin.
In what way has he lived a wonderful life?
He hasn't lived a wonderful life, and that's it. Like we all want to go on a bar crawl through Pottersville. We want to go out and we're going to wear a t-shirt,
up some lines off Violet's ass.
Violet's supple ass. We want to like tuck cigarettes under our t-shirt.
I'm gonna make it very clear that I don't condone that statement. I'm just a guest on MoveTube. I'm not.
Yeah, you're not. You're not. I
don't co-sign the casual
sexism that Ralph is actually putting forward. But no, there is an element where Pottersville does represent this kind of degenerate bohemian America, which was the same kind of like the America of the Jazz Age, right? It's almost nostalgic for that, like these degenerate years of prohibition. And kind of Capra is much more of a kind of, he's presenting the family, home ownership, the bathtub, the walls, even the fact that the Bailey town is built in the Pottersville world. It's built, there's a cemetery in its place. And But I think that cemetery is there. I think the town is built over a cemetery, because I think someone alludes to it earlier. He's like, I used to go hunting there when I was a kid. I used to shoot rabbit in the cemetery. So there's like an element where the Bailey town is literally built on top of a graveyard. I don't know what that means. Who knows? But there's the idea of,
right? I guess
it's a loaded metaphor. Like, I think, yeah, the Bailey view of the world is itself probably anathema to us in a way, because by definition of we're all on a podcast episode right now, rather than like, I don't know, tending to our beautiful families and singing around the piano. You know, we've chosen Pottersville.
with its
life.
Amazon fulfillment center,
Yeah.
and it's Weatherspoon's table service app.
Yeah. I don't know. It's still a heartwarming Christmas film though. Like, I'm not gonna. What do you think?
I mean, well, also it's interesting that it flopped when it came out.
Did it?
Yeah, it only became a hit in 1976. It flopped it was 20 years later, and it started showing on TV, and it became a staple.
That's so
and probably they managed to get it for TV because it was considered a flop, so they didn't want to release it in theaters again. Because like, usually before like video, like successful films would be released in the cinema over and over again, and you'd only have the B movies or the failed, like the flops on telly. And yeah, it became a massive hit. And Frank Capra lived to see it be a hit, and he was really glad because it was his favourite film he ever made.
Yeah, it's weird to think why the reasons why it might have flopped, because maybe it was too on the nose, maybe it was too nostalgic in a way. Like, people had seen the world, you know. Like I said, they'd liberated the camps at Belsen, and they'd, you know, executed somebody in front of a burnt down house, and they'd come back from that, and then someone's telling them, well, all you need is a house and a wife and 4 kids, and everything's going to be fine. And they're probably like, well, no. I imagine maybe it struck the wrong note almost, because he must have started producing this during the war. Because if it came out in, I think, November 46,
yeah,
unless they shot it in like fucking 3 weeks, which might have been possible knowing the kind of Hollywood production system at that time, but it's possible that they kind of made it to suit the mood of the war. And actually, by the time people come back from it, they were like, "Oh, fuck this! Miss me with that. Like, this is too on the nose and too nostalgic and too kind of black and white."
I know. I don't know if that. Yeah, I think sometimes films flop as well, don't they? Sometimes they don't get like maybe it tested
Most films
badly.
that are like really famous and successful now flopped when they came out.
Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, you hear about it, like Blade Runner, like
Most, though. I don't know if most.
Vertigo. No one liked Vertigo.
Really?
Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane didn't do great, did it? I think often it's exaggerated, isn't it? Though.
Yeah, I thought
Vertigo was barely seen until like the 80s, I think.
Really?
Vertigo bangs though. Like,
Yeah,
I know, but Vertigo is like probably Hitchcock's most like ahead of like avant-garde film.
Yeah, it's also
Also his best.
Also, like Jimmy Stewart's probably most avant-garde role as well, I should think.
Yeah, I mean Jimmy Stewart's not given to
Not known for his. Well,
roles like
Capra's
that.
really celebratory of in that interview with Lesterman. He's really celebratory of James Stewart, because he's like, well, he's not acting. He celebrates the authentic. You know, so he doesn't need to act. He said he kind of does that now these days, but he's like, these days, you know, people act. You know, but James Stewart, he was just himself. So there's a kind of there's an element of that individualism about being himself, being authentic, being.
Just to make this point, Vertigo didn't flop. It got mixed critical response. Apparently, it made less than Hitchcock's usual films, but it still far exceeded its budget. It made 7.3 million and it cost 2 million to make, so it's all right.
Oof. There we go then.
But it did have a big renaissance critically, like
because you can just map like psychoanalysis onto it. So all the screen lot fucking loved it.
I mean, like
Robin Wood and that, they fucking loved that film.
Yeah, and also Deleuze kind of writing a lot about Vertigo. He chose in Cinema 1 and Cinema 2. He chooses. You know, Vertigo is one of his big set pieces. He has a weird selection of films that he uses to kind of prove his... probably an incorrect selection of films to prove his point, but he kind of goes off.
Owen is now a Delusian. That's
I've always been a
the
Delusian,
revelation
mate.
of this podcast.
But no one wants to hear it, so, you know. Apart from first dates, that's the best time to get out of the delusion. You lose, you lose.
So what were we saying? What were we saying about It's a Wonderful Life before I derailed the conversation? Sorry.
I don't know. What were we saying?
I think we're just closing off. It wasn't A Wonderful Life, but it is a pretty fun movie, and we've learned a bit about its director's politics and the journey.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there was a point being made that I rudely curtailed.
I can't remember.
It wasn't being made by me.
I was making any good points. It's purely from enjoyment terms. If we talk about the fabula of it, it's great. It's quite watchable for a film of its era because it's not directly moralizing and hectoring, or its morals are like you kind of it's well enough structured and well shot enough to kind of just keep you going.
Yeah, the chiaroscuro in that scene where he goes back to the house is incredible. This time I clocked it more than ever. Like that chiaroscuro in that scene, it's quite anomalous because the rest of the film doesn't have like.
No, it's shot that glossy,
amazing cinematography. Yeah, but there's that one scene. It's insane chiaroscuro where Ernie and Bert, who apparently the Sesame Street characters are apparently not named after them. It's just a coincidence, which is wild. Yeah,
really. Yeah, because they have like an affectionate kind of love-hate.
I'm pretty sure I read
closeness. Yeah,
yeah. Ernie and I'll look it up.
Ernie, yeah. The cab driver.
My favourite scene in the film is the scene where he turns up at Mary's house and he doesn't really know why he's turned up there, but he's been told by his mum to go there, and
he doesn't really want to be there.
And he doesn't want to be there, and he's really grumpy, and he's a real sort of bastard to her, and she puts on this nice record, and then he sort of leaves and then comes back, and the guy who really wants to get with her, Sam Wainwright, calls her up, and then they both talk to him on the phone, and they're both like just about to kiss each other, and then they don't, and it's like really that's really amazing. Yeah.
It's quite
really
charged
amazing.
Sexually, isn't it? Actually, when they're listening, they're not really listening to Sam anymore on the phone, and they kind of can obviously feel each other there. Yeah, it's quite a sexy scene.
That
actually.
scene's so sexy.
Yeah, every time we watch it, my mum's like, "I bet he's got a stiffy." Every year without fail, I watch it. I think I've watched it with my mum 3 times now, 3 years in a row. And every time she forgets she said it, but she says it again.
I've got the horn.
I mean, Jimmy Stewart is quite associated with that. There's that famous quote from Hitchcock about when the green haze comes out of the bathroom and she walks out wearing the dress, and he stands up and like, and Hitchcock says, "Oh, as James Stewart stands up, he is getting an erection." So Stewart's Jimmy has been well documented. But yeah, I actually found the romance scenes the most compelling. Also, the scene where she like hides in a bush.
Yeah, it's really they're really sweet, aren't they? They're really cute. They're really sweet. Also, really true as well. Like really, yeah.
Yeah, no, they've got a nice kind of modern energy. It's not particularly saccharine, their relationship. It's quite.
And someone pulls a trick on, and the bit where they all fall in the pool, and like someone does it as a trick, and then they really embrace it. It like becomes the thing that's meant to undermine
even
them
like the school
really
principal. The school principal jumps in as well. Yeah, it's great. It's a really nice scene.
What interesting point is, because this is, I think, generally accepted now to be the definitive Christmas movie, right?
Yeah.
But it's not. It's not really about Christmas at all. Like it's incidental.
No, it's not for like.
It's as much about Christmas as like Die Hard is.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. It's set at Christmas. If we're going to have that debate,
or Trading Places.
Christmas, Trading Place. Christmas has no bearing on it. It just happens to be snowing. The winteriness of it, I think, kind of accelerates the doomy nature of it. Because I think the rest of the film must be during summer. When they shot the film, apparently, it was like a heat wave.
Really?
Shooting the whole film was an absolute heat wave.
The cover is like full of snowflakes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, marketing-wise, they're going to stress the Christmasiness, but it's.
Yeah. Is there any true Christmas film?
I mean, there's films that are about Christmas.
No.
Home Alone, that's a Christmas movie, no?
But that's also incidental, isn't it? Like it's like because apparently, bit less so. But like because the same year this came out, apparently Miracle on 34th Street came out, which is more of a Christmas film. Yeah, it's a Christmas film.
But less. Yeah. But it hasn't survived because it with It's a Wonderful Life, like Christmas is a backdrop to serve a psychological and social story, whereas it's 34th Street is just Christmas is.
I mean, that's
great.
the only way to do a Christmas movie is to have the Christmassiness as incidental. There's something
Love
more
Actually.
powerful. I mean, it's via negativa that you talk about an important thing by going via an unimportant thing.
I mean, there are Christmas films, right? There's like
and they're all bad.
I don't know.
Muppets Christmas Carol,
It
mate.
is incredible. Not
A great film.
but also like the remake of Miracle 34th Street's all right with Richard Attenborough. Oh, the thing is, there's a good Christmas film. What's it called with David Niven and Cary Grant?
I
The
don't want to Google it, but
it's
there's also you've also got variations of a theme, like variations of Charles Dickens. So you've got Scrooged with
fantastic film. Yep.
a great film, and actually
I haven't seen any of these films.
a properly anti-corporate film.
Well,
it revivals the institutions of media institutions. It's really, and it's also set in a Pottersville is reality in Scrooged. We're living in a world of Pottersville in Scrooged.
Also, the Santa Claus, a classic, of course.
Oh, a classic.
Where Tim Allen kills Santa and then becomes Santa.
He dons the mantle of Santa.
Yeah, watch that film.
Kind of tribal ritual.
At school, every Christmas they showed us that film.
It's good.
It's a really good film. Bad Santa, of course. Yeah. I can't believe we haven't talked about the remake of It's a Wonderful Life starring Nicolas Cage.
What?
I didn't know that. What?
Yeah.
Why aren't we reviewing that?
Yeah, I watched it. What's it called? I watched it years ago.
Are you serious?
It's called The Family Man. It's called The Family Man.
Okay, I might even watch this tonight.
The Family Man is a 2000 American romantic comedy drama film directed by Brett Ratner, who of course directed X-Men 3. And
a man who experiences what his life might have been like if he'd made a different decision earlier in his life. It's the Forking Paths. It's Borges's Forking Paths.
It's an unofficial remake, but it's literally at Christmas, and it's got a similar plot. Maybe I'll watch that tonight as well. I haven't seen it for years.
I might watch it.
I think that's when it came out. So I saw it when I was 12 or
Jesus,
or 11 or something.
Yeah, that was
11. Yeah, I was 11.
I was 12. Yeah, Jesus. 1 year before we lost our innocence when the towers went down.
That
the real Die Hard.
That watershed moment of my life, which I really cared about loads.
We laugh, obviously.
I definitely did get in trouble at school for making jokes about it.
Did you?
I definitely did.
Sorry,
yeah.
Repeat the jokes.
I was one of those, Bin Laden Airlines, play straight to your office, and all those.
Well, the classic one, which requires a bit of distance from the event, is America removed 2 of its towers so it could suck its own dick.
That's clever.
Good. That's good.
Should we wrap it up for the listeners? Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Don't go anywhere.
Wait, did you hear that? Did you hear that bell? Did you hear that bell? Wait.
Has one of us got wings now?
Yeah.
I think one of us got wings.
What is that? From Uber Eats or?
Yeah, I've got a delivery. My Dana kebab's just come.
Oh, I'd love to have a kebab with you soon.
It can happen. No, it can't happen. Literally can't happen.
No, illegal.
Illegal.
All right.
We're living in Tarkovsky's zone now.
Hopefully they can vaccinate. Come on, get on with it, guys. Come on, Matty.
Sort it out. Did you do your injection calculator?
Yes, I did. Not for fucking. Well,
where are you?
Same as you, actually. Do you have some kind of? Are you a vulnerable person?
Absolutely not. Well, I am emotionally, but physically not.
We're the same then, right? We're both like when was it?
There are 38 million people ahead of me.
Yeah, it's
where's the vaccine calculator? Where do I
just Google it? Just Google vaccine calculator.
Google it. Yeah. And you'll
get. They're going to power us off with the dog shit Oxford one. That's what's going to happen. We're not going to get like.
No, we'll get the Durham one still.
We're going to get the crappy. We're not going to get that good Moderna shit or that good Pfizer. We're going to get.
They're going to cut it. They're holding it pure. They're going to cut that shit. You know.
All right.
All right, lads. It was wonderful.
It's a wonderful pod.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
listeners.
Christmas.
Merry
everyone.
Christmas.
Bye bye.